Klen, an ordinary salaryman, is suddenly pulled into a mysterious realm that leads to a strange Victorian-era world. With an ancient power awakening within him, he must uncover why he was brought here and whether there's any way to return home. The story begins in the year 1349 in the city of Tingen, where a man suddenly awakens inside the body of Klen Moretti. He looks around and freaks out, seeing blood and a gun in his hand. He then turns to the mirror and notices a bullet wound in his forehead that is mysteriously healing. But what's even stranger is that the reflection in the mirror isn't his own. Everything begins to blur as memories of the body's original owner start flooding in, making him remember a name that isn't his. As the memories begin to merge, the original soul fades away, and Klen realizes that he's just been reincarnated into this guy's body. Meanwhile, somewhere else, an official team discovers the lifeless bodies of Welch and Naya in an apartment. The lead investigator notices that the crime scene is staged to look like both committed self-unalivement, but he knows that what actually happened is either a black divination ritual was performed or a Beyonder was sacrificed, causing an evil force to awaken. The investigator then notices a portrait of a man in the room, Klen Moretti, who he learns is a classmate of the deceased. According to the info the investigator has, Klen is an orphan who lives with his siblings. So the question is, how is he connected to this case? Speaking of Klen, he, in the meantime, takes time to learn more about the original owner of this body. He learns that Klen was a history graduate and was proficient in 2 ancient languages, Fesak and Hermes. Klen goes through his journal, where it's written that one of the victims, Welch, came to him a few days ago claiming to have found an ancient notebook. Together, the two of them deciphered the text on the notebook's first page and discovered that it belonged to the Antigonus family of the 4th epoch, a millennia before the current period. After digging deeper into the Antigonus family, they came across supernatural things, and the original Klen wrote in his journal that everyone, including himself, was going to die. The current Klen wonders what the original must have found to write something like that, but before he can find an answer, a woman's voice calls from outside. Klen quickly hides all the bloodstains in the room, but forgets to hide the gun. That's when the woman enters, and she is Melissa, Klen's younger sister. Melissa notices her brother acting strangely, but because it's early in the morning, she doesn't suspect too much. After checking up on him, she leaves. Klen quickly wipes away the blood before anyone else enters the room. Then he checks his bullet wound in the mirror, noticing that it has almost disappeared. He wonders if this healing is some kind of ability he gained by transmigrating. But the bigger question in his mind is, what caused this bullet wound? Since the original Klen's memories are still fragmented, many details are missing. Klen suspects that the original committed self-unalivement, possibly related to the dark secrets he discovered from the ancient notebook. But what bothers him the most is why he reincarnated. He clearly remembers that after a long day at work, he went out for drinks with friends, where he playfully performed a sketchy ritual called the Luck Enhancement. As he starts to realize that ritual might be behind his reincarnation, Melissa returns with breakfast. After giving him his food, she gets ready for school, telling him to keep working hard to get a job. She also asks him to buy some lamb and peas, promising to cook a good meal for him as a reward. Once she leaves, Klen reveals his intention to escape from this place immediately, knowing that the original Klen must have stirred up some serious trouble that got him killed. So, Klen suits up, doesn't forget to take the mysterious-looking gun, and decides to perform the same sketchy ritual again, the one that brought him here to this Victorian era from the modern world. He's hungry, so he tries to eat what Melissa made, but realizes it's not edible at all. So he heads to a bakery and buys a loaf of bread. The bakery owner seems to know him and casually asks about his day-to-day life, when Klen notices that there's a man watching him from outside. Klen pretends not to notice and starts walking down the street, thinking about how this world shares many similarities with his own. But one thing that stands out is how Emperor Roselle Gustav apparently invented things like tarot reading and the landlord game, which only exist in the modern era. This makes Klen suspect that Roselle Gustav might have also transmigrated into this parallel world just like him. A coin with Gustav's face suddenly falls from Klen's hand, and as he bends down to pick it up, a clown appears and invites him to visit their circus that evening. At that moment, Clen realizes that a man is following him. He quickly walks away and ducks into a tent to hide. Unbeknownst to him, it's the tent of a fortune teller, who instantly realizes he's lost and offers to guide him on his future path. Meanwhile, the man following him waits casually outside, patient for Clen to come out. Clen doesn't want to get caught, so he plays along with the fortune teller and agrees to a tarot reading. She tells Clen that it'll be free since he's her first customer today, but Clen remains cautious, knowing full well there's no such thing as a free lunch. Still, he goes along and asks her to read his past, present, and future. The lady draws 3 cards she believes hold the answers, and Clen, still suspicious, uncovers the one representing his present. It's the Fool card, symbolizing new beginnings. But before the lady can continue, the actual fortune teller enters the tent, revealing that this woman is just a beast tamer posing as a seer. Clen still wants to see the other 2 cards, but as the man who was following him walks in, he swiftly escapes through the back door, and the cat-and-mouse chase continues. Clen goes back home to perform the ritual uninterrupted, and offers 4 loaves of bread in the 4 corners as a sacrifice. LOL. Then he stands in the middle of the room and performs the ritual, chanting, "O Celestial Worthy," repeatedly. The ritual, much to my surprise, takes effect, and papers start flying like crazy. But much to Clen's disappointment, he doesn't return to his past life. As he's about to give up, a screeching pain hits his head, and a dark red aura enters his body, sending him to a dimensional void filled with an ominous presence. Suddenly, a woman and a man are summoned before Clen in this place, and Clen wonders if he unintentionally summoned them by performing the ritual. The woman asks Clen if he is the owner of this place, referring to it as a divine realm, and Clen doesn't answer, having no clue himself where he even is. From his knowledge, a divine realm should have a shrine, and just by thinking of a shrine, one manifests. The man, on the other hand, grows wary and demands that Clen explain what's going on and who he is. This question leaves Clen wondering, who is he? Is he Joe Mingrui from his past life? Or is he now Clen Moretti? A throne appears through Clen's imagination, and he sits on it, thinking deeply before answering that he is the Fool, referring to what the tarot cards revealed about his present. Clen then pretends to be an almighty being to intimidate both the man and the woman, and tells them he is merely testing his newfound domain. The woman, now a bit scared, politely asks Clen to let her leave, while the man remains cautious and composed. The woman finds the entire experience mysterious, and, suspecting Clen is a supernatural being called a Beyonder, requests that he bestow upon her the knowledge to become one as well. Clen, however, has no idea what a Beyonder is. Still pretending to be all-knowing, he tells the woman that the man beside her can answer that small question. The man, meanwhile, keeps wondering how Mr. Fool summoned them here. Regardless, he answers the woman's question, telling her that to become a Beyonder, she must first join one of the churches in the kingdom. Only then might she have a slim chance, as very few Beyonders exist, and those who do have dedicated their lives to fighting against the dangers lurking in the darkness. The woman doesn't want to be controlled by the church, so the man suggests she meet with the royal family of the millennial nobility instead, as she seems to be a noble herself. However, the woman feels uneasy about that as well, so the man proposes another option. He claims to have 2 Sequence 9 potions, Sailor and Audience, that, upon consumption, can grant supernatural powers. While they're talking, Clen slowly begins to understand that maybe he too is a Beyonder, with a different attributed superpower. Meanwhile, the woman makes a deal with the man to help her become a Beyonder. Now that she has no other business here, she politely requests Clen to allow them to leave, and perhaps invite them again in the future. The man, on the other hand, praises Clen for having powers beyond comprehension. Clen wonders if he should invite them again, because if he does this too often, his identity might be exposed. But at the same time, he wants to explore this unknown realm, to uncover a way to return to his previous life. So he agrees to future gathering, telling both the man and the woman that they will meet again next Monday, 3 p.m. The woman realizes they haven't introduced themselves yet, but she doesn't want to give away her real name, so she proposes they use code names. At that moment, someone knocks on the door to Clen's room in the real world, causing Clen intense pain in his head. The woman doesn't notice and names herself Justice, while the man calls himself the Hanged Man, and Clen declares that he is the Fool, excitedly stating that they are now members of this mysterious tarot club. Anyway, Clen ends the gathering using his newfound authority, and as the realm dissipates, the Hanged Man finds himself back on his ship in the stormy sea, while Justice returns to her room. Clen wakes up as well, only to hear the police on the other side of his door, demanding that he open up. With no way to escape, Clen quickly hides all traces of blood and the gun, then opens the door, recognizing the inspector who was stalking him earlier. Clen accuses the man of stalking him, but the man clarifies, saying he was only trying to protect him. He introduces himself officially as Leonard, the investigator handling the case of the two deceased, Welch and Naya. He's accompanied by his partner, Dunn Smith, who seems to have special powers, judging by the change in his eye color. They inform Clen about Welch and Naya's self-unalivement, and Clen instantly realizes that they were actually possessed by some evil force. Without Clen noticing, Leonard rummages through his belonging and finds the journal where Clen had written about his own death. Clen defensively claims he has no idea how that got there and says he's lost memories of recent events. Dunn states that Clen visited Welch's house a few days ago, and since then, Welch's revolver has gone missing, so he finds it pretty convenient that Clen claims to have memory loss. Dunn deduces that the revolver is probably somewhere in the room. Clen gives in and admits he has the revolver. He also truthfully states that he woke up on his desk after a failed suicide attempt, and since then, he's lost a lot of memories. Dunn realizes Clen is telling the truth, as everything matches his suspicions. However, he isn't letting Clen go until he undergoes a psychic verification, which might also help recover his lost memories. As they're about to take Clen into their vehicle, a young kid is seen being chased by a man for stealing. Dunn stops the kid, but the kid resists and causes a commotion. Taking this opportunity, Clen escapes, not wanting his real identity exposed through the psychic verification. While running, a splash of water falls onto him, when suddenly both time and space freeze. Clen realizes that a Beyonder is causing this. As everything begins to distort around him, Clen desperately searches for an escape and is led straight to a carriage, unaware that the Beyonder guided him there. He climbs in. Soon after, he realizes something is off and asks the driver to stop, but he doesn't. The driver reveals himself to be Dunn, who tells Clen they're heading to Welch's house, the crime scene. That's when Clen wakes up, realizing it was all a bad dream. Or was it? The door to his room opens, and standing before him is Dunn, who this time properly greets Clen, making Clen realize that Dunn is a Beyonder who manipulated his dreams. Dunn states that the powers of Beyonders grow stronger at night. Then, manipulating space, the two of them are suddenly transported to the sky, where another female Beyonder appears and puts Clen to sleep. In his dream, Clen sees his parents from his previous life, and the Lady Beyonder also appears there, watching him carefully to uncover his secrets. Clen quickly gains control of his mind and erases his parents' memories from the dream realm, which enrages the Lady Beyonder. She demands that Clen tell her where he hid the Antigonus family's notebook and what exactly happened that night at Welch's home. Now scared, Clen says he doesn't know, and in fear, conjures a revolver and shoots himself. His death causes the dream to collapse, and he realizes that the Lady Beyonder was conducting the psychic verification to determine if he was telling the truth. Now that it's confirmed, Dunn agrees to let Clen go, but warns him that because the Antigonus family's notebook is still missing, Clen's life is in danger. They don't have time to babysit him, so they suggest he join them in their team, the Nighthawks, and become a Beyonder like them. The next morning, Clen decides to visit a local pub to further discuss the offer with a man named Wright, as per Dunn's instruction. As he enters the pub, he finds the customers chaotically spectating a fight between dozens of rats and a hunting dog. The spectators also begin fighting amongst themselves and grow irritated at the sight of a clean-looking kid in this shithole. The bartender, Wright, notices Clen and, sensing something suspicious, demands he spill the beans. When Clen explains that Dunsmith sent him, Wright leads him to a small cabinet room behind the bar, which turns out to be an elevator leading underground to the Nighthawk's secret base, disguised as a regular security company named Blackthorn. There, in a fancy hall, sits the receptionist, Roseanne. Clen approaches her, and seeing this new guy, Roseanne recalls that the captain mentioned a newcomer would be arriving. So, she opens another secret room from which Leonard steps out, but he only smiles at Clen before leaving. Clen enters the secret room, which leads to a stairway, where he runs into Royale Reedine. She minds her own business and walks away without saying much. Anyway, Roseanne continues showing Clen around the place, and they come across another Beyonder named Fry, who's in the middle of experimenting on a subject. They keep walking, and Roseanne introduces Clen to another newcomer named Kenley, who joined the Nighthawks only 6 months ago. In any case, she's actually escorting Clen to meet the captain, but she doesn't want to come face to face with him, claiming to be terrified of him, even though she admits he's kind and caring. So, she asks Clen to walk the rest of the way alone. He does so, unbothered, and finds himself in a large hall that looks like a secret church. A door opens to the left, leading to the captain's room, none other than Dun Smith. Seeing Clen, Dun assumes he's made his decision. He gives Clen the paperwork, and once Clen signs it, he officially becomes a member of the 7th Unit of the Special Operations Department of Awe County Police. Dun explains that the Nighthawks work under the Church of the Evernight Goddess, and their job is to handle supernatural incidents, like the Welch and Naya case. Dun shakes hands with Clen, officially welcoming him to the team, and Clen, delighted, calls Dun his captain, thanking him for the opportunity. Dun mentions that Nighthawks often risk losing control of their powers, and asks Clen to show respect to those who have passed due to this. Clen places a candle at the gravestones in the memorial room, paying his respects. Afterwards, Dun tells Clen about the legend of creation. According to this legend, God created all existence and used both his eyes to create the sun and the crimson moon. Yeah, right. Anyway, the legend continues that God's body became land and stars, his hair became the phoenix, and his ears became demonic wolves. The point is, since everything is essentially God, it's possible to gain power by making potions with mythical ingredients, unlocking pathways to become a Beyonder. According to Dun, there are a total of 22 pathways. His church, the Church of the Evernight Goddess, can open 4 of them using sequence 9 potions. Dun wants Clen to follow the seer pathway, but tells him to first meet Old Neil in the alchemy room before deciding. So Clen heads there, where Old Neil, like a stereotypical kind old man, asks Clen to help him organize some documents. The old man seems to know a lot about Clen, including the fact that Clen is proficient in ancient languages like Physac and Hermes. Old Neil praises Clen for being on the path of a researcher and encourages him to keep learning, assuring him he'll eventually be able to decipher the notebooks currently in Neil's possession, ones that went missing after Emperor Roselle's death. Neil himself deciphered some transcripts and discovered that Roselle invented symbols containing mysterious powers. He managed to identify a few of them and believes they represent numbers. Clen takes a look at the notebook and instantly recognizes the language. It's just modern Chinese. As he reads, he realizes Emperor Roselle was merely writing a journal about his journey in this parallel world. However, the notes don't just contain fond memories. They also hold important messages, including one that states the key to potions is to internalize. Clen can't believe he got his hands on such useful information and keeps reading, hoping to find a way back to his homeworld. As he continues reading, he learns that Roselle once made a hasty decision and wrote that he should have picked other paths like apprentice, seer, or marauder. Clen doesn't fully understand what this means, but before he can dig deeper, Old Neil demands his attention. Clen apologizes for spacing out and explains that he was trying to decipher the texts, which makes the old man laugh, thinking it's impossible for someone Clen's age. Anyway, Clen had come to ask for advice regarding which pathway he should choose. But now that he's received guidance from someone far greater, the Emperor himself, he decides to take the potion of the seer pathway. The old man prepares the potion, and Clen hesitantly drinks it, instantly feeling it surge through his blood and veins, literally mutating his DNA. As the potion takes effect, Clen's vision becomes blurry, but with old Neil's help, he focuses. Following Neil's instructions, he imagines creating an object, a missile to be exact. This causes the ground to shake. As Clen begins to lose control, he keeps imagining modern things, airplanes, astronauts, etc. His spirituality starts to leak out, but thankfully, he regains control. An anxious Neil breathes a sigh of relief that nothing catastrophic happened. Now that the process is complete, Neil asks if Clen's surroundings look different. Clen nods, and Neil explains that Clen now has the vision of a seer, which lets him perceive many things at a glance. For example, he can now read Neil's health condition just by looking at his aura. Clen inspects the old man and suddenly sees two giant eyes behind him. When he asks Neil about it, Neil explains that it's just a magical representation of the ritual. In any case, Clen develops a bad headache. He's not used to spirit vision, so Neil tells him to turn it off by tapping twice between his eyebrows. Now that he's back to normal, Neil tells him more about his abilities as a seer. He can now use spirituality for divination arts and all kinds of ritualistic magic. With that done, Clen returns to Dunn's office. Dunn congratulates him, but also warns him not to go looking for danger just because he has special powers now. Clen keeps that in mind, then asks Dunn about his job. Dunn explains that for the first 3 weeks, Clen will serve as a clerk before officially becoming a Nighthawk. Dunn even pays Clen his first month's salary in advance. Seeing how much money he's received, Clen can't help but feel excited, because with this amount, he'll easily be able to rise out of poverty. Anyway, Dunn tells Clen to buy a cane, then gives him a daily task. Walk around Welch's house, hoping it will help him recover his memories and remember where the Antigonus family's notebook is. Clen follows instructions on his first day until someone approaches him. It's Leonard, and he wants Clen's help locating a kid named Elliot, who was kidnapped that morning. Normally, the Nighthawks only handle supernatural cases, but since one of their covers is a security company, they have to deal with this kind of stuff too. And since Clen is now an all-seeing seer, Leonard hands him Elliot's clothes as a clue to locate him. Clen activates his seer powers and uses his cane as a dowsing rod, managing to pinpoint the area where Elliot is on his very first try. The carriage heads in the direction Clen indicates, and eventually they arrive at a mansion, exactly where Clen has been detecting Elliot's spiritual energy. Clen enters the mansion and uses his powers again. He sees that behind a room to the far right, 2 kidnappers are chatting, while the kid sits silently in the corner. Leonard goes in first, bursting through the door, and Bro literally dodges incoming bullets while Aura farming. He gracefully beats the shit out of the kidnappers, and then Clen moves to free the kid. But that's when he notices a magical feather falling on top of the kidnappers, causing them to transform into evil spirits. Just another Monday for Leonard. He defeats the possessed kidnappers too. As the weakened spirits try to escape, Clen activates his seer vision again. Using his revolver and cane, he detects that the spirit has now taken the form of a giant monster. Thinking quickly, Clen fires, but the bullet does nothing, probably because it's the first time he's actually held a gun. Leonard gets it, so he steps in and handles the spirit personally, trapping it in his domain expansion, filled with rose petals, causing the monster to dissolve into petals as well. Suddenly, Clen is hit with a strange, fragmented memory. He realizes that the original Clen had come to this mansion before, but he doesn't tell Leonard and just moves on. After reuniting the kid with his father, Leonard examines the spirit corpses and realizes that the kidnappers were Beyonders too, but had no control over their powers. That's why the evil spirits were able to possess them. Leonard wonders how they managed to get their hands on potions. Still Still, the job is done, and Clen prepares to leave. Just as Leonard learns from an invisible observer about Clen's suspicious behavior earlier, Clen returns home, but just as he's about to open the door to his room, he suddenly finds himself in the house across in the kidnapper's building. He hears a noise from a distant room, and upon entering, he finds his notebook, open to a page that reads, "Everyone will die, including me." The pages vanish, along with the building, and Clen finds himself standing on top of the Fool's card. It was just a nightmare. Clen is already in his room, but he's convinced the dream holds a deeper meaning, so he decides to visit the house across the kidnapper's building, hoping it will lead to some clues about the Antigonus family's notebook. Meanwhile, at the Nighthawk's base, Dunn is in the middle of interrogating a man and discovers, by seeing through his memories forcibly, that this man once had the Antigonus family's notebook in his possession. Dunn inspects the man's neck and sees a tattoo belonging to a secret organization called the Secret Order. This makes Dunn realize that this man is behind why the notebook entered the black market in the first place. Apparently, this man was following Clen for the past couple of days, and that means that the Secret Order wants the notebook. Leonard suspects that the notorious organization will send more people after Clen, and because they cannot afford to let such an evil org get their hands on the notebook, they must find it first. A fellow officer enters, informing Dunn that Clen has found a clue about the notebook. Clen brings everyone to the house he found himself in, back in his dream. They discover a rotten corpse of an old lady. Before investigating this case, the officers have a thorough search, but still they don't find any clues related to the notebook. Since their only lead is the mysterious deceased lady, they decide to dig into this case thoroughly, and Dunn learns that the deceased lady's son, Ray, has gone missing for the past couple of days. Leonard provides Clen with a picture of Ray, and Clen, using his powers, tries to find Ray's location. However, his cane, instead of pointing at where Ray is, goes berserk before almost attacking Clen. Dunn realizes that Clen's divination is being disturbed by some other powerful force. The Nighthawks head back to their base, and Clen stands before the Chanis Gate, which God knows leads where. Since Dunn's office is right in the corner, Dunn comes to talk to Clen, offering him some comforting words after noticing how anxious he is about all this. Dunn compliments Clen on wearing a proper suit and then gives him a citrine pendulum to help him enhance his spiritual divination. Dunn then informs Clen that he's spoken with the Holy Cathedral, and they've approved the use of a Grade 2 artifact to help locate Ray. The artifact is a special Beyonder magical item, and because of the destructive nature of artifacts such as this one, they are sealed behind the Chanis Gate. Two male Beyonders named Earl and Borgia, along with a lady Beyonder named Daly, who's come from another city, are here to deliver the artifact. Clen recognizes Daly as the lady who performed the psychic verification on him, and he's glad to see a familiar face again. Dunn notices the artifact the Holy Cathedral gave them, and seeing the name 2049, he grows tense because apparently using this artifact is extremely dangerous, as it grows violent if it senses anything related to the Antigonus family. Earl thinks they'll be fine though, and tells everyone to start performing the ritual. To open the sealed artifact, everyone uses a repetitive hand gesture that weirds Clen out, and he wonders why this artifact needs to be cheered up. Regardless, he joins in as well, and the sealed artifact opens, and out comes a Lilliput-sized clown puppet that instantly realizes the weakest being here is Clen, so it tries to take control of Clen, but thankfully, Leonard saves him from getting choked to death. Daly states that the puppet has taken a liking to Clen, which is why it's targeting him, but Dunn suspects that the puppet is only trying to get near Clen because it's sensing the Antigonus family's aura from him. Since he has touched the notebook, Clen keeps running away from the puppet, and it follows him, even more determined. Dunn tells Clen not to worry, because if the ritual fails, the worst-case scenario is the puppet will take control of people within 5 meters of its reach. Clen asks what would happen if the puppet takes control of everyone here, and Earl states that's very unlikely to happen. In any case, Clen keeps running and throws Ray's coat on the ground, and once the puppet notices it, it goes completely berserk, making Dunn realize that Ray perhaps is a descendant of the Antigonus family. Earl quickly puts the puppet back in its box, and then starts to track Ray's whereabouts. They head out into the streets, still cheering with their left hands in unison. And Klen states that he's never been this embarrassed before in public. They get in the carriage, and the artifact leads them to a dock warehouse, where Ray is in the middle of performing a dark ritual. He has the notebook before him, and as the ritual completes, his insides come out and absorb the notebook within, before turning him into a total abomination. A man in clown makeup, revealing himself as part of the Secret Order, arrives first, and sensing that the Nighthawks are almost there on their carriage, he decides to make this event a bit fun. Shortly after, the Nighthawks arrive, and Klen, using the pendant Dunn gave him, senses great danger inside the warehouse. An ominous aura starts coming out of the warehouse, terrifying the horses so much that they immediately escape, leaving the poor Nighthawks with no option but to walk back all the way once they're done. But focusing on the current event, all of them get on their guard when a gigantic-sized Ray bursts out, looking like he's been a shut-in and has been eating nothing but McChicken for 10 years, just like you guys. Ray sees the artifact box in Earl's hand, and it enrages him so much that he starts rushing toward it. Since Klen is the only non-combat Beyonder, Dunn tells him to stay behind, and then activates his powers before attacking the monster. Leonard activates his powers as well, and constricts Ray with several vines. Daly attempts the finishing move, drowning Ray in an endless ocean, but her magic doesn't work, and Ray grows even bigger and stronger. Dunn realizes that it's the notebook that's controlling Ray and asks Daly to find a weakness. Daly does it in second and asks Dunn to control Ray for 3 seconds so that she can target his weakness. Dunn accordingly binds Ray in many spikes, but that causes the notebook to go beyond berserk, and it bursts through Ray and hits Dunn with a spike right into his heart. Klen gets scared for his life, as several more spikes attack other Nighthawks. One hits the suitcase that has the puppet sealed inside, and as the suitcase falls on the ground, Earl tells his colleague to guard it and goes on the offensive himself, charging at the notebook with his sword. But his attack does 0 damage, and he too is defeated in a counterattack. Seeing his comrades suffering, Dunn desperately tries to get out, but he is impaled by the spike against the wall and can't do anything at all. Klen feels helpless as well, so he tries to attack Ray himself using his secret gray mist power that once let him enter the other dimensional realm. His attack using 2 cards works, slowing down Ray, and this gives Daly enough time to perform her special move, Nether Hand. As her magical hands rip out the flesh and bones of Ray, the monster explodes, at the cost of Daly getting gravely injured as well. Dunn rushes to her, and finding her unconscious, he feeds her a healing potion. Klen, on the other hand, hears whispers coming from the notebook and unknowingly is drawn to it. But just as he picks it up, the man from the Secret Order makes his move. As he ambushes Klen, Dunn shoots him, but that was only a fake phantom, and the real one is still hiding. Klen, acting defensively, puts the notebook inside his suit and then focuses on the clown-faced man. As the clown man exposes his face, Klen recognizes him as the guy who had asked him to visit their circus on his first day in this world. The clown man keeps using his phantoms, and judging by his dodging skills, he seems to be a far superior Beyonder than everyone else. While the clown man is clowning around, Klen from a distance tries to predict his movement, and once he figures out where the man will move next, he shoots, and surprisingly, the clown man gets hit right in the stomach. Sadly for Klen though, it was just a fluke, and none of his next shots work at all. The clown man activates his abilities and makes all of the Nighthawks think that he's targeting Klen, distracting them long enough that they forget to protect the artifact. The clown man then kicks the suitcase into the air, and once it lands, a gap opens up, releasing the puppet which in complete bloodlust stops time itself before taking control of all of the Nighthawks. Now roped up, the Nighthawks are the puppets, and the puppet is now the puppeteer. Normally, this is the end for all side characters, but because Klen's gotten in this mess as well, he, in a desperate attempt, awakens an external force, the mysterious gray mist, by performing the luck enhancement ritual in very slow motion, the same one that got him in this world in the first place. As the ritual is completed, Klen finds himself in his mysterious realm again, and is glad that it worked, as he can finally breathe. In any case, Klen cannot stay here for too long because his real body is still in that world and is being controlled by the puppet artifact. But before going back, he must figure out how to fight the puppet. Using divination, he makes a spell that will help him return to the real world safely. And as he then returns, he finds himself out of the puppet's control. The clown man applauds Clen's achievement and states that ever since the very day they had met, he had taken a liking to him. In any case, the clown man wants to make a deal with Clen, telling him that if he gives him the notebook, he will lift the puppet's control on him, and also offers to answer any of Clen's questions as well, claiming to have been a former seer himself. Clen doesn't know what he should say. The gray mist has already lifted the control, and so he wonders why a former seer didn't see that. Perhaps it was the gray mist itself that messed with the clown man's divination results. In any case, the clown man tells Clen about the seer pathways sequence 8, and as Clen hears it, he becomes completely mortified. Because Clen didn't go through with the deal, the clown man slowly tries to get the notebook from him. When Clen reveals himself to be able to move and attacks him, the clown man, in response, also moves from his position instinctively, but gets caught by the puppet as a result. Now that he's immobile and Clen's not, Clen easily finishes him off with a neck shot before a headshot, defeating a very powerful Secret Order member all by himself. Or has he? The clown man gets up repeating the word Hornasis frantically before falling again, and Clen can't help but wonder what this word means. He reveals that he's been hearing this word in mysterious whispers ever since he came to this world. In any case, he closes the gap of the suitcase, sealing the puppet artifact again and freeing everyone from its control. Leonard approaches Clen, whispering to him that he saw everything Clen did while in the frozen time state, but he doesn't give Clen any compliments for being special, acting narcissistically, stating that he himself is special in other cases as well. Clen can't believe the ego of this guy. In any case, he and the others bring back the notebook to the Nighthawks base, and the Nighthawks seal it inside a mysterious room locked behind the Chanis gate. Dunn knows Clen wants to read the contents of the notebook, so he assures Clen that he will be permitted to do so once the Holy Cathedral deals with the notebook. Dunn then thanks Clen for both preventing a huge disaster and defeating a Secret Order member, promising that he will tell the Holy Cathedral about Clen's feats. Anyway, the two of them walk down the hallway when Clen passes through Fry's room, whose current experimental subject is the clown man's corpse. Seeing the corpse fills Clen with guilt, as this is the first time he's taken a life. Dunn comforts him, telling him that Clen has actually saved many lives by taking that one life, and he should be proud instead of guilty. Clen becomes calm thanks to Dunn's words. But before moving forward, Clen asks Dunn about the 8th sequence of the seer pathway, claiming to have learned what it is. Clen reveals that the clown man told him that the 8th sequence is the clown. Pause. I have no idea the F this means, because the anime has kept this entire concept super vague. However, what I do know is that the first sequence is the highest sequence, meaning it's the closest a Beyonder can be to a deity level, and 9th is the lowest. So yeah, 8th sequence is pretty low level. You're welcome. Anyway, the next morning, when Earl is about to leave with the artifact, he asks Clen exactly how he defeated a Sequence 7 Secret Order member when he is only a Sequence 9 seer. Clen lies, saying that it was the goddess that saved him from being controlled by the puppet, and the clown man didn't realize that. And Clen took a lucky shot and incapacitated him with a headshot. Regardless, Earl is still impressed, stating that he's never seen such an outstanding seer before, so he wishes Clen good luck on his future. After bidding Earl and his colleagues farewell, Clen leaves, now focusing on the Hornasis that he keeps hearing in his mind. To learn more about this word, he visits the original Clen's history teacher, Azik, at Hoy University, and tells him if the word Antigonus and Hornasis have any correlation in history. Azik, however, claims to have no idea, so Clen leaves unsuspectingly, not realizing an evil spirit possessing his teacher heard everything. Somewhere else, a mysterious being known as Lord Oracle threatens his disciple that he will rip his soul apart for losing the Antigonus family's notebook. His disciple defends himself, saying he only gave the book to Welch and Naya, referring to them as lambs, because they were a bunch of nobodies, and he thought that they would study and decipher new things. Not knowing the book would be lost, the disciple promises that he didn't betray the Aurora Order. Lord Oracle doesn't care about any of his excuses, because his precious notebook has now fallen into the hands of the Nighthawks, so he proceeds to punish the disciple, forcing him to eat his own 2 fingers. The disciple still begs for his life, putting all the blame on Klen, and promises Lord Oracle that he will find the other lamb who he's failed to kill, implying that Welch and Naya didn't kill themselves, but it was him who killed them for messing with the Antigonus family's notebook. The disciple is certain that Klen has uncovered something new and assures Lord Oracle that he will deal with Klen as well and return to him with the notebook's secrets. Lord Oracle calms down and lets him live, warning him that this is going to be his last chance to prove himself. Meanwhile, Klen visits Old Man Neil, who wants to teach him ritual magic today. Neil demonstrates how it's done and warns Klen to never communicate with unknown spirits, because that will lead to Klen sliding into the abyss where only death awaits. Klen, however, who's been using the luck enhancement ritual, has technically been communicating with an unknown entity that's lending him this gray mist power. In any case, he continues to watch as Neil seeks to communicate with the goddess through several chants, basically requesting the goddess to give him $30. After performing the ritual, Neil confidently walks out into the streets with Klen, and voila, they find a wallet containing loads of cash. The old man states that it's the goddess who gave him this money, and Klen honestly still thinks this is a mere coincidence. A man in a carriage stops there, claiming that the wallet is his, and Neil returns it as the emblem of the man's carriage matches with the wallet's emblem. The man thanks Neil for his honesty and gives him £30 to express his gratitude. Klen can't believe it, and starts to believe that wishing to the goddess through this ritual might actually work. After getting this lesson from Neil, Klen walks aimlessly in the streets of Tingen when Angelica, a divination club receptionist, approaches him, handing him a leaflet and asking if he's interested in divination. Klen's job is basically divination as he's a seer, but he still enters the club to see what it's about. And the diviner Glacis uses tarot cards to answer Klen's question regarding a place he wants to return to. According to Glacis, Klen cannot return to the place he wishes to go now, but in the long run, it's possible. Pretty vague, but Klen appreciates the divination and pays Glacis his fee. Glacis begins to cough, hinting at bad health conditions, so Klen uses his seer vision, finding out a disease around Glacis's lungs, so he tells Glacis to visit a doctor soon. Glacis asks Klen what made him think he's sick, and Klen proudly claims that he is a seer. He wants to act like a proper seer for the sequence potions to take better effect, so he joins the divination club and fills out the membership form when the receptionist mentions that she's heard from her superior Vincent, the best diviner in their club, that Klen is an excellent seer. Apparently, Vincent is taking a divination class at the moment about mirror divination, and getting interested, Klen decides to take a peek. In that class, Vincent is telling his students that mirrors are the gateways to the spirit world, and if there's the slightest error in mirror divination, a tragedy might happen. According to Vincent, mirror divination is also a ritual magic where threefold incantations are used to pray to the 7 orthodox beings. Klen activates his seer vision to see if they are having a healthy practice, and sees that everything looks normal. However, he thinks something's off. Vincent hands a box to one of his female students, and as she leaves the place, only then does Klen realize that something's wrong with that box. Vincent notices Klen, asking him what his business is here, and Klen explains that he's just joined this club and is a seer. Vincent can tell from his divination that something deep inside Klen's soul has guided him here, and that is hope. But this same hope is causing Klen's confusion and has almost forced him to choose death. This hope is, of course, about returning to Klen's homeworld, and Klen is amazed to see how brilliant Vincent is as a diviner. Klen asks Vincent if there's a way for him to get out of this predicament, and in response, Vincent tells him 2 words: gathering and family. Klen wonders what this means, but regardless, he thanks Vincent and leaves his divination class when it can be seen that Vincent's got 2 fingers missing, meaning that he's the same disciple who's after Klen's life under Lord Oracle's orders. Back at home, Clen studies about his abilities, trying to modify the gray mist powers to let him return home, and writes a ritual magic that would call out to him. Suddenly, he senses a clocking movement of a monster outside, so he opens the door to outside, but finds that it's just his sister Melissa playing with her self-made turtle toy from where the sound was coming from. Sadly, Clen doesn't have the time to play with his sister anymore, so he tells her that he must get back to work. Melissa understands her brother is now a very busy man, now that he's gotten a job, but still, she demands some of his time, making him promise that he will go with her to her friend's birthday party next Sunday. Clen agrees cause Vincent told him to focus on family and gathering. Speaking of gathering, he decides to hold a gathering at his mysterious realm as well, and summons Justice and Mr. Hanged Man by calling out to their stars. This time, Clen uses his seer vision that helps him see that while Mr. Hanged Man's aura looks like stormy sea waves, Justice's aura is as calm as a lake. Clen can also see that Justice has become a Beyonder, as she has a constellation symbol of a giant dragon showing behind her, which is a magical representation of her pathway, meaning she has taken the spectator pathway, while Mr. Hanged Man has taken a sailor pathway. Clen takes a look at his own constellation symbol using his seer vision and finds out that it's a pupilless eye. That indicates secrecy. There are also contorted lines below the eye that represents change, but as to why they are overlapping lines, Clen doesn't know yet. For now, he focuses on conversing with his two guests and welcomes them to his domain, telling them to feel free to speak now. Justice, in response, wants Clen to answer 3 questions. Her first question is, what should she do as a spectator? Since this is a very simple question, which to be fair, Clen probably doesn't have an answer to, Mr. Hanged Man answers for him, stating that a spectator must always spectate and be detached from everyone else while observing them keenly. That's how a spectator grasps their true thoughts and attain subtle clues. Hanged Man also mentions she must master the sequence potion and find the symbolic meaning of those potions' names to minimize the risk of losing control of her powers. Clen, however, interrupts Hanged Man, learning from the late Emperor's journal that potions shouldn't be mastered. Rather, it should be focused on digesting it, as the most contents of potions remain undigested inside. He also clarifies that they shouldn't try to find the meaning of the potion name. Rather, they should act like those names, because that's the key. Hanged Man is surprised, and like it hits him that this might be the case, so he stands up, thanking Clen for such valuable insight. Anyway, Justice moves on to her second question, asking Clen what would happen if an animal drinks a Sequence 9 potion. Judging from her expression, Clen instantly realizes that this idiot must have fed some animal a Sequence 9 potion, and it's revealed that it was her dog that drank it. Mr. Hanged Man again answers for Clen, stating that the animal will either die on spot, become a monster, and if neither of that happens, it would turn into an extraordinary creature. It seems the dog hasn't died or turned into a monster, so Justice is glad that everything turned out okay. She asks her third question, first telling Clen that the people of her place at Lowen, mostly royalty and nobility, are seeking reforms. She doesn't go on to details, not wanting to reveal her personal details, but almost blurts out that she is from the royal family. In any case, her place's ministers are too stupid, and she wants to recruit new people and asks Clen how she can find reliable talent. Clen offers a simple solution. He tells her to hold a fair examination open to everyone, including the commoners, called the World Exams, and the winner will get to serve the kingdom and its people. Since Clen has gotten the gist of the fact that Justice is from the royal family, he gives her the task to find late Emperor Rosel's secret diaries. Hanged Man is shocked, realizing that the extremely hard to decipher texts are actually diaries, and becomes even more intrigued, figuring out that the mysterious man here can read them. Clen also tells both of them to try ritual magic on next Sunday and pray for good dreams, and if they succeed, they can make adjustments to their wishes. Justice asks what the incantation should be, to which Clen replies, and I quote, "The fool that doesn't belong to this era. You are the mysterious ruler of the gray mist. You are the king of yellow and black who wields good luck." This means that Clen is asking them to pray to him, and that makes both of them think that Clen has reached the level of the 7 orthodox beings. and he is a terrifying being who must be feared and worshipped. Anyway, the two leave, and Clen comes back to the real world, and as he looks out the window, he sees that his brother Benson has come to visit. They spend a fair amount of time together, and on Sunday, the three siblings head to Selena's house for her birthday dinner. As Selena comes out to hug her friend Melissa for coming, Clen recognizes her as the girl from the club whose box ticked him off. Selena's Diviner Club friend Elizabeth is also here, and as they move on to celebrate, Clen moves on as well. Suddenly he senses someone praying to him and realizes that it's the hanged man who started performing the ritual magic as per told. Later during the birthday party, Elizabeth approaches Clen, whispering to him playfully that she hasn't told Melissa about the fact that Clen is secretly a seer. Melissa sees Clen talking to Elizabeth, so she comes there and first agrees that both Clen and Benson should use this opportunity to find a suitable bride, but she's displeased that Clen's trying out his luck on someone underage like Elizabeth, which is a total misunderstanding. After the birthday party, Selena is with her two friends, Melissa and Elizabeth, and she decides to open her presents. One is from Vincent, a high-level magic mirror, and she incantates the spell Vincent taught her unsuspectingly. However, that causes an altar in Vincent's house to activate, and Vincent laughs maniacally as he's now certain that his plan will work and he will defeat Clen. Speaking of Clen, he senses danger coming from Selena's room, so heads to her room and peeks on them, seeing that the three girls are just doing basic mirror divination, like asking the mirror when their Mr. Right is going to come in their life. However, using his seer vision, Clen realizes that the mirror is actually trying to possess Selena. He has no time to call Dunn or other Nighthawks, so he decides to borrow the Evernight Goddess's power by using the ritual magic that Neil taught him. While he prepares to initiate the ritual, Selena becomes possessed by an evil spirit. Before she can hurt her two friends, Clen comes there and puts her to sleep using his skill Nocturnal Slumber. Then he swiftly begins praying to the Evernight Goddess, which immediately overpowers Vincent's spell. So Vincent, taking countermeasures, draws power from his own master, causing Selena's possessed body to absorb the mirror and go berserk. Clen writes down the chant for the ritual, but seconds later he gets caught by Selena's ever-stretching hair that begins to drain his soul. This is actually Vincent in control of Selena, and he accuses Clen of being an ungrateful lamb who, instead of accepting the gift of death from his master, acquired Beyonder powers. Vincent suspects he only got those powers by discovering something from the Antigonus family's notebook and demands Clen to tell him what he discovered. Clen, not knowing who's controlling Selena, desperately tries to grab his revolver, but he fails and starts to lose consciousness. As his eyes close, he hears the chants of Justice, who's praying to him, and her prayers give him the strength to overpower Vincent. Vincent, desperate to win, sacrifices the muscles in his arm to make Selena stronger, and Clen, in the meantime, prays to the goddess to free Selena from her evil contamination. As his prayer is noble and pure, the Evernight Goddess grants his wish and frees Selena from Vincent's hold. Clen checks on Melissa, who's unconscious, and he realizes that he must do something to keep his family out of danger. Meanwhile, Vincent, who has failed again, tries to run for his life, but his superior catches up to him first and, as warned, rips his soul into shreds. Clen, in the meantime, tells Dunn about this incident and his findings, that Vincent must be related to some secret organization that's after the notebook, since he was the one who gave Selena that mirror. The two of them come to Vincent's house, only to find Vincent's corpse, and both realize someone evil is behind all of this. As Dunn stares at Vincent using his sleepwalker powers, he finds himself in another realm out of nowhere, standing before a demonic being shackled in chains upside down. A few days later, both Clen and Dunn go to attend a creepy opera show, which is a gathering of the Alfalfa tragedy survivors and their families. According to the opera singer, when the Alfalfa ship sunk in the raging sea because of an evil individual's betrayal, who slaughtered many people that perilous night, a warrior named Triss stepped up and saved everyone, becoming the kingdom's new hero. The hero Triss enters the stage, and everyone applauds for him. Meanwhile, Dunn can be seen visibly shaken from the shock he took from seeing the evil being for a brief second. Clen has learned that the evil being could be an entity named the True Creator that organizations like the Aurora Order worship. Clen calls it a pity that Vincent died. Otherwise, they would have gotten more clues about the Aurora Order. Anyway, the two are currently handling this Alfalfa tragedy case, and they believe there's something else hidden that's not being disclosed. A week ago, a lady came to the Divination Club, wanting a divination from Clen regarding her husband, Joyce. Apparently, Joyce was boarding the Alfalfa ship, but the ship never reached the port. Clen looked at Joyce's picture and used his power as a seer, seeing glimpses of Joyce barely surviving in the sea, while the Alfalfa was burning in the background, and after washing ashore, Joyce was finally safe. Clen reported his divination to the Nighthawks, and they, finding this incident suspicious, began looking for new leads to get to the bottom of the case. Apparently, Triss, the so-called hero, rescued Joyce, and both Clen and Dunn have come here to meet him to get more insight on this case. However, when Triss notices the presence of the two Nighthawks, he quickly leaves in his carriage. In any case, both the lady and her husband Joyce also came here to show their gratitude to Triss, and Joyce meets Clen for the first time. As they shake hands, Clen notices that something is bothering Joyce spiritually, and Joyce, seeking help, requests a divination. Once they are at the divination room, Joyce explains his situation, telling Clen that ever since the Alfalfa incident, he's been having the same nightmare over and over every single night. Clen, using his powers, enters Joyce's dream world to see what this nightmare is, and discovers the Alfalfa is on fire. There's a man who has a newborn baby in his hands. The man ruthlessly throws the baby into the sea before diving into the sea himself, but Joyce stops him from falling, not wanting him to die as well. Clen is standing right behind Joyce, and he asks Joyce why he is trying to save that barbarian's life. Apparently, the guy who is trying to commit self-unalivement here is one of the crew who betrayed the other crew members of this ship and caused this tragedy. But because he's the last one, Joyce wants to save him to ask him why he committed such atrocity and what pushed him to do it. Clen tries to understand Joyce's reasoning, and he suspects that there's some mastermind working behind the scenes who manipulated everything. That's when Clen senses someone way in the back of the ship glaring at them, and it's Triss. But the moment Clen turns around, the scene changes, and he finds himself in an ancient palace ruin. A giant crimson eye stares into his soul, and there's a malicious throne to his left that keeps whispering the words Hornasis and Phlegrea repeatedly. The dream ends, and Clen can't help but question what the F Hornasis means. This word keeps haunting him every time he tries divination, and he suspects that some evil deity is behind all this. He also suspects that the ancient palace might have some clues related to why he was transmigrated into this world. Having no answers, he hopes his history teacher Azik found something and moves on to deal with the current situation. He tells Dunn about the mastermind he saw in Joyce's nightmare, and he believes that Triss is the mastermind who manipulated the survivors into thinking that he's the hero who saved them. Dunn, however, doesn't accept this as proper evidence, because this is just a hypothesis and isn't enough to convict a hero who is famous. They need concrete proof, and to do so, Dunn decides to take mandated Punisher and Machinery Hivemind's help. Speaking of the hero, he's having quite the time of his life, sleeping with two beauties. Someone interrupts his sweet dreams though, having the shadow of a spider, and she asks Triss if he's having fun being worshipped by the victims and their families. Triss, in reply, proudly states that provoking husbands into killing one another and then taking advantage of their widows has been quite the enjoyable experience. It's revealed to us that Triss is a Sequence 8 instigator, which explains how he instigated the entire crew to fight each other. Anyway, Triss believes that he has achieved quite the feat and asks the cloaked lady to promote him to the next sequence. She agrees to do it, but asks him to complete one more task first. According to the lady, Nighthawk is keeping an eye on one of Triss's accomplices, so Triss will have to do this task alone. She pays him for the task in advance, handing him the 7th sequence potion formula and the name of the potion, Witch. Back to Clen. He visits Neil asking him to help him buy a pair of talismans to protect his brother Benson and his sister Melissa. Neil takes Clen to a secret place hidden beneath a local bar, and it's the underground market of Tingen. While walking through the market, Clen notices a supposed madman with strong spiritual waves. The madman also notices Clen, and approaching him, smells the scent of death, which causes him to bleed from his eyes. Clen becomes worried, and Neil states that even though this guy is spiritually aware, he apparently is known for his rambling, so it's best if Clen ignores him. Clen, however, realizes that the madman only said that because Clen is technically dead, at least the original Clen is. Also, this body died once as well. They move on anyway, and Neil guides Clen to the shop that sells talismans. As Clen is in the middle of choosing talismans that the old man is going to process himself later, he notices Triss nearby, so he begins following Triss, bringing Neil along with him. That's when he notices that Triss is already being followed by another man, and Neil recognizes that man as the mandated Punisher's informant, meaning there are other informants nearby as well. Suddenly, there's a chase between Triss and the informant, causing chaos in the marketplace, and all of the informants charge toward Triss. The chase continues to the above ground, and when Neil and Clen reach there, they find that Triss has already dealt with the informants, and beside the informant's corpse is standing Dunn. Dunn informs Clen about the situation and the fact that the mandated Punishers have already found evidence against Triss, and that Triss is an instigator from the Demoness sect, excelling at stirring evil desires and conflicts in his victims. Clen uses his dowsing rod to locate which way Triss went, at the same time asking Dunn more about the Demoness sect. According to Dunn, this sect is an evil organization known for spreading disasters all across this kingdom, and the upper executives of the sect are all female, which makes sense because they worship a forbidden deity named the Primordial Demoness. Anywho, Clen and Dunn arrive at the place where Triss is, and they enter there along with other Nighthawk officers. Many females come running out at the same time, and one of them runs into Clen, who notices that she's dropped a hat, and as he picks it up, he finds it suspicious that a lady has a man's hat, so he uses his seer vision on her as she leaves in her carriage, but finds nothing unusual. Meanwhile, Dunn and his crew scour through the entire building but don't find Triss. A few days later, there's still no trace of Triss anywhere, and eventually the search operation ends. Clen, on the other hand, becomes an official Nighthawk, and as a result, his pay is increased to £6 a week. He becomes a regular diviner at the Divination Club and also holds a few more meetings for the Tarot Club in his mystery realm. Clen also gives the talismans he and Neil made together to Benson and Melissa. Having not many cases going around, Clen takes some few mysticism classes daily and also gets into martial arts combat training, as he isn't any good at combat. Just as everything seems to become peaceful and quiet again, Leonard comes barging at Clen's door, informing him that the city police has reported that the deaths in the past 2 weeks quintupled, meaning that something unusual is going on, even though there's been no report of any Beyonder-related cases. Leonard goes into details about the deaths, and according to the reports, a week ago, over a dozen female factory workers passed away from lead poisoning, while, on the other hand, there was an arson. On that same day, another man drowned himself due to extreme poverty, and many other similar cases have happened. How are they all related? Well, most of the victims are low-class workers, who are either extremely poor or suffering from severe illness. Clen pities the victims, cause his own family in this life also suffered from extreme poverty, which led to Clen's mom falling to a terminal disease that took her life. Since then, Clen's big brother worked his ass off to protect little Clen and Melissa. Anyway, Clen visits one of the victims who died from a cardiac arrest a few hours ago, and he, using his powers on her corpse, replays the moment she died in order to see if there's anything unusual going on. As expected, Hours before she had a heart attack, she was patted on the back by someone, and the hand looked like the hand of a woman. Clen informs his findings to Dunn, and Dunn states that Clen's visual info matches with his investigation's findings as well, and apparently, in every other case as well, the mysterious woman's hand appeared every time. Dunn suspects that Triss and his female Beyonder accomplice are behind all of this. In the meantime, Clen comes up with a theory, but Leonard, being nosy, takes credit for it as well. In any case, Clen tells everyone how all of these victims were fated to die very soon, so they were targeted for life theft. The people who steal lives, their goal is typically to use these stolen lives to summon an evil deity, or a demon, or a large-scale curse. While the others are looking into the demoness sect, Leonard jokes around with Clen that both of them are protagonists of this story, and that might cause the wheel of history to go absolutely bonkers. The only reason Leonard claims to be a main character is because he has secrets, and he knows Clen's got some secrets too. So Leonard tells Clen that they will remain comrades if Clen promises to not endanger the Nighthawks ever. Clen isn't interested in speaking with this medieval cliché overly dramatic NPC, so he focuses on solving this case. Dunn determines that these cases do match the characteristics of life theft ritual, and they must act fast to find the altar and stop the ritual. Otherwise, a disaster will strike the city. Using a pendant found from one of the victims' corpses, Clen searches for the altar's location, and once he finds it, they immediately head to the location, not wanting to damage the real world. Dunn decides to use his powers to draw the enemies into a dream and instructs Leonard and Fry to attack at the same time. They then approach the mansion, alarming the lady inside, who conceals herself using a potion, vanishing into thin air, and attacks a Nighthawk officer by stabbing them in the back. This causes her to reveal herself for just a second, and Leonard uses this opportunity to ambush her, and Dunn tries to drag her into a dream, but fails. Leonard manages to shoot at the lady's chest, but it was just a substitute spell. As all three are unable to get to her, Clen realizes that the lady must be at least sequence 7, since Leonard and Fry are at sequence 8 and 9. The lady then enters the mansion and prays to the primordial demoness to grant her powers to tackle this situation, and as she's empowered by the demoness, many evil spirits are released that attack the Nighthawks. One of them hits a disposable side character named Fry, causing literally his blood cells to freeze. As these freezing cells reach the heart, something triggers inside of him. Dunn, on the other hand, enters the mansion, finding many voodoo dolls inside that most probably have the stolen lives stored in them. He notices someone in the distance that looks to him like the primordial demoness, and as she unleashes an ominous dark attack, he barely defends himself, coughing up blood as a result. The lady, in the meantime, escapes through the back window, where Leonard is waiting outside. The lady sneakily hits Leonard with a purple flower that has the witch's curse placed on it, while Leonard sacrifices a finger of his and a strand off his hair to save himself from the curse. The lady escapes. With the lady gone, the curse is removed as well, so Leonard places his ripped finger back in its place and then joins the others. Clen is at the mansion, and he restores a mirror momentarily to see the reflections of people it had shown last week. As the mirror shows the reflection of the lady, Clen recognizes her as the same girl who ran away from the place where Triss had hid himself. This makes Clen realize that the lady isn't one of Triss's victims. Rather, she is Triss. This would explain why only females are in the higher echelons of the demoness sect, and it's honestly disturbing that they were all once male. Triss, who's now going by the name Trissy, boards a train, and her beauty draws many men to her, and I can't help but ask if, is she now going to sleep around with men now? A few days later, Elizabeth visits Clen asking him to interpret one of her recent dreams. Apparently, ever since she returned from her visit to the Lamood town, she's been having nightmares. And in those nightmares, she keeps seeing an abandoned castle where a wraith spirit haunts. So, Clen and his colleagues visit the Lamood castle, and as predicted, they find that there is indeed a wraith in the castle. Apparently, wraiths are known for invading dreams, and this could explain why Elizabeth has been having these nightmares recently. To exorcise the wraith, Dunn this time brings an artifact with him called the 30782 Sun Emblem. However, the only problem with this artifact is that it can turn Beyonders into idiots who keep praising the sun endlessly for a quarter of a day. So anyway, they begin the search inside the palace, and Klen, using his seer vision, discovers the wraith first, taking the form of a black mist. As the Nighthawks try to apprehend the wraith, it takes the form of a headless knight and attacks the Nighthawks with its sword. Dun gets hit first, causing the artifact to fall from his hand. The knight doesn't show any interest in the artifact and continues to target Dun, who fires a gunshot. But the knight, like a total badass, slices the incoming bullet in half. Klen tries to help Dun, but this ends up as a huge mistake as the knight notices him and hits his face with an elbow, shattering all of his eyes' blood vessels. To stop the knight from further hurting Klen, Dun activates his ability to send the knight to the dream world. The knight, acting defensively, gets close to Dun to stop him from fully performing his spell, but Dun was only baiting, and his actual goal was to activate the artifact. And as the knight gets just close enough, within 5 meters of the artifact, he activates it, and the artifact literally dissipates the Night Wraith. While the others deal with the remaining traces of the Wraith, Klen notices some spirit particles flowing toward the rubble. He inspects the rubble and finds a portrait, and judging by the style, it's from the 4th epoch, and the person in the portrait might be the original owner of this palace, the first Baron Lamud, who according to legends simply vanished one day. Klen finds the face of this man strangely familiar, and it doesn't take him too much time to realize that this man's face resembles his history teacher Azik's face. But how could that be? This would mean Azik has lived for over 1,000 years, all while keeping his identity a total secret. Klen, being an idiot when he needs to be, once again doesn't think too much about it and listens to what Dun has to say. Dun believes that the spirits have been purified, but because of their destructive nature, he decides that it's better if they stay here the night. Klen volunteers and stays up to do the first watch while everyone else rests. Dun has given him the artifact just in case a wraith pops up, and sitting idly, Klen stares at the artifact when it hits him, that if he performs divination on the artifact from the gray mist-filled mystery realm, the interference might be removed, and he might get to see the history of how this artifact was formed. But first, he wants to make sure no one's looking, so he goes to a secluded spot and enters the mystery gray mist realm. As he imagines having the sun emblem artifact, it manifests. He then uses divination on the emblem, and it works, triggering a past event memory of the emblem, where a cloaked man is seen approaching the eternal blazing sun. The eternal blazing sun controls the sun pathway, and the man tried to contain it inside this very emblem, but as a few drops entered the artifact, it cost the man his life. Hence, the emblem became an artifact that cannot be controlled. Klen replays this event again, but this time he approaches the eternal blazing sun from a first-person perspective, as he wants to see what even is this thing. As he touches a droplet of the eternal blazing sun, the ground beneath him vaporizes and everything turns black, before an actual blazing sun vaporizes him into nothingness. The dream doesn't end though, and Klen keeps burning along with his shrine, and as he continues to suffer, a gray mist saves him from death. His wounds begin to heal, and as he regains consciousness, he realizes that he actually gazed upon the sun deity, and as a consequence, he was almost burnt to a crisp until the mysterious gray mist saved him. The pain makes Klen fear using divination ever again, but as his wounds instantly disappear, Klen finds himself in a white plain where many modern Chinese phrases like white angel, flaring sun charm technique, sun pathway, and never gaze upon a god appear. Klen doesn't understand what's going on, but the one thing he realizes is that he's being rewarded by some divine being for going through a deity's wrath for a full minute. His assumption is right, as the word appears. 4th sequence, Unshadowed. This is Klen's reward, a high-sequence potion formula that can promote him to the 4th sequence. Klen is glad that he took the chance of doing this, but he gets sad seeing his realm destroyed in pieces. Before leaving, he fixes the place, and then returns to the real world. He looks around and is relieved that nothing dangerous happened while he was gone. He gets sleepy from taking all this stress, but his mind still wonders what was up with all those words, like White Angel, for example. Next morning, Clen returns to his home when he finds a mail in his letterbox from Azik, who claims that he's gotten information about the word hornasis. So Clen visits his teacher but doesn't find him in his chambers. As the winds blow over a curtain, he discovers red blood markings on the walls, specifically the painting of the Lamud castle.
It was at this moment that he knew. He f***ed up.
Azik appears before Clen right at that moment and tells Clen in a menacing tone that he's been having these strange dreams recently. He claims that he saw this castle in his dream, and that's why he drew the castle. Clen doesn't bother asking any questions, as he's completely stunned and in fear. Regardless, Azik gives him a book named Research on Ancient Ruins of Main Peak of Hornasis. Clen thanks Azik and tries to leave immediately, but Azik insists Clen read the book right there in front of him. As Clen casually runs through the pages, he finds a portrait that resembles the palace he saw in his dream. However, the palace in his dream looked more magnificent and even had a creepy throne that didn't look like a human was meant to sit on it. Anyway, Clen eagerly reads the contents of the book, which talks about the Hornasis mountain range that is near two countries, Loen and Intis. At the Hornasis mountain range, once an ancient nation lived, and Clen finds drawings of the ancient humans, which he finds strange as their clothing resembles the clothing of modern humans. Apparently, the ancient humans believed that death wasn't the end, and that the deceased family members would protect them from the afterlife, so they kept the deceased family members by their bedside for 3 days. Azik notices the page Clen's reading, and having read the book already, Azik states that after 3 days, there wouldn't be any burial, because the deceased would magically vanish. What Azik finds more interesting is that the ancient humans worshipped a mysterious entity who they referred to as the Sky Mother, an Evernight ruler. These terms, of course, are quite similar to the Evernight goddess that the Nighthawks worship, so it makes Clen wonder if they worship a similar entity. Anyway, Azik asks Clen why he hasn't been drinking his coffee, and Clen, flustered, quickly takes a sip not to offend his sensei, when he finds the taste to be super bitter, so he adds a couple of cubes of sugar in it, which makes Azik ask Clen what's so different today, as he used to usually add only 1 sugar cube in his coffee.
It was at this moment that he knew. He f***ed up.
Azik then tells Clen that he's been studying mysticism and discovered that Clen's fate shows some clashing ripples that regrettably point towards Azik. Azik then confronts Clen, being certain that Clen has seen the castle recently. Azik has also noticed Clen acting extremely nervous, and that has made him realize that Clen has discovered some of his secrets. However, fortunately for Clen, Azik doesn't mean any harm to him yet. Azik claims that he merely wants to reclaim his past, and to do so, he takes Clen back to the Lamud castle, and Clen goes along with him without any questions. Bro's crazy. Crazy stupid. The only reason Clen thinks Azik probably won't hurt him is because Azik has always been kind towards the original Clen, and Clen's divination has also shown him that if he takes Azik to the castle today and keeps this incident a secret from the Nighthawks, Azik will save him someday in the future. Whilst walking towards the castle, Azik states that in his dreams, the castle was in a restored state and everything around it was beautiful and full of life. So Azik calls it a shame that things turned out to become this way. Entering the castle, the first thing he recalls is his child playing around the castle with a long sword, saying repeatedly that he is the king's knight. This makes Clen realize that the Night Wraith was actually the spirit of Azik's child. Azik then finds his son's sword impaled into the ground, and lifting it, he imagines the castle back in its original form. This takes a toll on Azik, but he pushes through it and opens a path to the underground. An unbearably sharp stench comes from the underground, making Clen realize that something evil is suppressed below. But still, Clen follows Azik downstairs, entering a tomb room where the remains of his son are kept. Seeing his son's remains, Azik grows furious and his powers get completely out of control. This causes thousands of spirits to be released from their graves. They accumulate inside Azik. As those spirits are again slowly released, one of them charges at Clen when he finds himself in a war field where the war is already over. The winning soldiers gather a pile of corpses and start to burn it, when a man comes out impaled with swords everywhere in his body. That man is Azik, and the only reason he's still alive is because he's been cursed with immortality. Seeking vengeance, Azik kills every single being in his sight, and when he gets outnumbered, Azik's personal Ymir appears and helps him win the war single-handedly. Ever since then, prosperity comes into his life, and he becomes a mighty ruler who is never defeated in war. After becoming a baron, he settles with his wife and child in the Lamud castle. However, at the end of the day, he wasn't blessed with immortality, but cursed. He had loyal soldiers in his arsenal who remained loyal to him even after death, and dealing with the dead, Azik himself was on the verge of tippy-toeing on the line of life and death. His wife was pregnant and in pain, and his son grew to fear him because the once gentle man always looked fearsome. As Azik almost lost control of his powers one day, the shockwave sent his son flying, and not wanting to hurt his own family anymore, Azik decided to abandon everything, including his own family. He left the castle, never to look back, and since then, he's been living as an ordinary man. But now that fate has called him back, he's here again. He finds that his son's skull is missing from its corpse, and Klen suspects that someone's behind it, and that's why Azik's son turned into a wraith. Azik vows to make the person who took his son's skull pay, and as he uses his own blood to trace who did it, his blood points to Klen. They enter a domain filled with skulls, and even after Azik performs the tracing ritual, his son's skull isn't found. A feather falls again in the distance, and it's the same feather that's been making special appearances in every single incident. Why? Whatever. Azik properly buries his son on a cliffside and gives him his final respects. Klen asks Azik if he now remembers everything, but Azik says that only fragments of his memories have returned, and the rest are still blurry. Azik mentions that every few decades, he falls into a deep sleep, and once he wakes up, he forgets everything in his past, except for his name and basic knowledge about this world. But these dreams of living with his family never end, and that's why he wants to make a difference this time by finding the perpetrators who stole his son's skull. Klen understands and wishes Azik the best on his journey. While walking back, Klen relates to Azik because he too, like Azik, is alone, as he doesn't have his real family anymore. He desperately wishes to return to his home world and meet with his parents once again, but the only reason he isn't broken completely is because he has Melissa and Benson here, who he still can call family, even though he isn't the real Klen. It's a new day in the city of Tingen, and Klen goes off to work when he learns that there's a party being held at the main hall of the Nighthawk's base. As he and old Neil enter the main hall, Kenley serves both of them a slice of cake, greeting them with a good morning. Klen doesn't have a clue as to what's going on, so he asks Kenley if today's some holiday that he doesn't know about. Kenley explains that they're celebrating his engagement, and hearing the news, Neil is more happy for Kenley than Kenley himself. The only reason Neil is so happy is because there's always been this unspoken rule/curse that no one in the Nighthawk squad ever gets into any romantic relationships or marriage. Leonard states how great he feels that his day started with a fine wine on a workday morning, to which Roseanne the receptionist adds that they should all take a leave today and make it an official holiday. But before they can discuss it, their captain, Dunn, comes to ruin the mood, informing everyone that he will now give them their patrolling assignments. Dunn assigns Kenley, the engaged boy, and Sika, a newly introduced character, to patrol the West and Golden Maple District. He then tells Leonard and Royale to stay here at headquarters, and then asks Fry to come with him to patrol the North District and the Raphael Cemetery. Klen feels left out and asks Dunn where he should go to patrol. Sadly, Dunn completely forgot that Klen existed, so he didn't assign Klen any duties today, and Klen can't believe that he's not being treated like the main character. Speaking of main character syndrome, Leonard comes over, telling Klen that because Dunn dwells with nightmares and dreams frequently, the reality and the dream world collide sometimes, causing him to forget things. Before Klen can worry about Dunn, Leonard jokingly says that they should be glad Dunn doesn't remember everything all at once, because if he did, he would nitpick everything in his sight. Dunn, on the other hand, thinks deeply for a good second, then decides to make Clen guard the Chanis Gate, which Fry usually handles. This is a big responsibility because the Antigonus family's notebook is stored beyond the Chanis Gate, and Clen hesitates to do it alone as he doesn't think of himself as competent enough. Dunn, however, thinks he'll do just fine because nothing bad ever happens at their headquarters. Besides, Leonard and Royale will also be at headquarters, so if anything happens, they will have his back. But Dunn does warn Clen that no matter what happens or what he hears, he should never open the Chanis Gate, unless, of course, it opens from within first. Hearing this warning, Clen loses all confidence in himself, so Dunn encourages him, reminding him that he's been a Nighthawk for over 2 months now, and so he's a big boy now. Dunn also gives Clen the task of writing a monthly report to the Holy Cathedral for his evaluation, and makes it clear that it should be more than 10,000 words. Now this is what's worse than guarding the Chanis Gate. Anyway, Clen heads to Dunn's office that's situated to the left of the Chanis Gate, and there, he decides to write the report first when suddenly he hears a loud thumping noise coming from outside. It doesn't take him too long to realize that it's the Chanis Gate where the noise is coming from, and before Clen can do anything about it, the gate slowly and menacingly opens from the inside. As a hand peeks out, Clen points his revolver at it, ready to deal with whatever it is. It's revealed that the hand Clen is seeing is the hand of a puppet that looks possessed. Perhaps it's an artifact. Whatever it may be, this is an alarming situation, and everyone gets alerted, including the receptionist, Leonard, and Royale. Leonard and Royale are the quickest to rush in and deal with the situation and see the devilish doll turning to Clen. She tries to give him a piece of paper, but the Chanis Gate automatically closes on her, leaving everyone utterly confused. Both Leonard and Royale recognize the doll as the Sealed Artifact 3-0625, also known as the Misfortune Cloth Puppet. They instinctively take a step back away from the Chanis Gate, and Clen doesn't understand why they're acting like they're scared or something. Leonard explains to Clen that a Chanis Gate breach on duty is perilous, and whenever that's happened in the past, all of the on-duty Nighthawks just disappeared mysteriously. Old Man Neil comes over, jump-scaring both Leonard and me, as I think both of us thought he was some kind of escapee zombie. I mean, he is a walking zombie, judging from how old he is. But anyway, Neil is not looking like he's in good condition, and worrying for him, Clen asks him what's wrong, and Neil replies honestly, stating that he's constipated. He mentions doing a ritual magic, begging the Evernight goddess to smoothen his bowels, but she hasn't answered his prayers yet. Well, good news for him, the goddess has just answered his prayers, and so the old man rushes off to the restroom. Meanwhile, Leonard checks for any anomalies, and after finding out that nothing's unusual, he assures Clen that he won't get in any trouble. But the big question is why the Misfortune Cloth Puppet tried to manipulate the guard to allow her to come out today, as it's been decades since she's shown any sign of life. Royale believes that the only explanation is that a newly added sealed artifact must have influenced it to do so. And you guessed it, the sealed artifact that was placed inside the Chanis Gate most recently is the Antigonus family's notebook. Later at home, Clen holds a meeting with his tarot club in his domain, and Justice, who was tasked with finding Emperor Rozel's diaries, manages to get 3 pages and gives them to Clen, who of course doesn't need to decipher them because they're written in his ever-familiar language. Clen reads through the first page, but finds nothing interesting. On the second page, however, he learns that on the 14th of July, the Emperor met a mysterious man named Zeratul, who, as Rozel claimed, is the leader of the Secret Order organization. Zeratul told Rozel that his Sequence 9 was seer and shared many insights, like how to digest potions by strict acting and the fact that he stole a dangerous sealed artifact, a relic of the Antigonus family. This is where the page ends. So Clen reads the next page, and there Rozel had journaled that he asked Zeratul for some details regarding the relic, but Zeratul apparently just smirked at him. This made Rozel so mad that he went on for the rest of the page ranting and cursing Zeratul. Nothing useful for Clen. In any case, Clen expresses to both Justice and the Hanged Man that he is indeed satisfied reading the contents of Rozel's diary. Their insightful gossip begins, and Justice states that thanks to Clen's previous advice, she She's now seeing significant progress in her potion digestion, but she's growing impatient, so she asks Clen when exactly she'll be able to fully digest her Spectator Sequence 9 potion. Clen thankfully knows the answer, and he tells her that it might take her a month to 6 months, and Justice really appreciates it. She has no other questions, so the Hanged Man gets a chance to speak, and he informs Clen about hearing rumors that a Sequence 8 listener from the Aurora Order is searching for the true creator's holy residence. Unlike the myth of creation, where the original god, the creator, tore his entire body into pieces to create the universe, leading to his death, many secret organizations believe that the creator never truly died, and his core essence became the true creator. The Hanged Man has heard from several sources that the Hanged Man tarot card that Emperor Roselle designed himself represents what the true creator looks like. Clen, who has already seen what this true creator looks like by divining into Dun's dream, smirks and literally says, "Pfft, true creator? More like fallen creator. Ha ha ha." However, Hanged Man takes Clen's words very seriously and thanks Clen for his guidance as usual. Clen's service isn't free, of course, and knowing that, Hanged Man asks him what form of payment he needs to provide for his insights. Clen once again asks him to either collect more pages of Roselle's diary or gather info regarding the Antigonus family. Hanged Man offers whatever he knows about the Antigonus family, that the Antigonus family began back in the Third Epoch, approximately 2,000 years ago, during the Cataclysm Epoch. Since then, they've controlled a terrifying pathway, and in the Fourth Epoch, during the Epoch of the Gods, Antigonus, Aemon, Abraham, and some other influential families joined forces with the Blood Emperor, establishing the Tudor Empire. But at the end of the Fourth Epoch, the Evernight Goddess took it upon herself and destroyed all of them. Clen didn't know that, and he's completely shocked for a second. Regaining composure, he commends both Hanged Man and Justice, and then ends the meeting there. Clen has many questions, and the biggest one is the fact that he's just learned the Secret Order controls the Seer pathway. He wonders if he can obtain higher sequence potion formulas from them. He also learned that the leader of the Secret Order, Zaratul, stole a relic from the Antigonus family. So is the relic the notebook, or is it something else? Something more powerful. Focusing on all of the events that happened ever since he came here, Clen first traces back to the kidnapping case that gave him the first clues related to the note. Then Ray had digested the note. Vincent controlled Selena through a mirror, and he too was connected with the Antigonus family. Clen believes that he's missing some critical clues from these cases. He also doesn't know yet why the kid was kidnapped in the first place. He had seer powers back then as well, but because of some external force interference in the outer world, he wasn't able to use divination properly. Since there is no interference in this realm, Clen enters the kidnapping house using his divination powers, and this time, he can clearly see that there are several big dots all around here that are the cause of the interference. As he looks for the cause, the notebook shows up, making Clen figure out that the mastermind behind the scenes orchestrated the kidnapping to lead Clen to the clues on the notebook. He then tries to figure out why Ray stayed in Tingen instead of running away with the notebook, and also why Vincent used dark mirror divination on Selena. After retracing his steps several times, the results remain unclear, frustrating Clen. Clen wonders if the only reason he's not getting to an answer is because he is still not as good as a seer. So he decides to promote to Sequence 8 all by himself and looks for clues on how to make the Sequence 8 potion. He already knows that its name is Clown, so he writes down the name and uses divination on the paper, which sends him into a dark place where he is first shown Ray's dead body, where something is glowing on his head, probably his brain. Next, the Clown Man's corpse is shown to Clen, from which a blood orb comes out. Then Welch and Vincent, back when Vincent gave Welch the notebook in the first place. Clen wonders if Welch and Vincent's clue means that he has to do something like lure the Secret Order by using the notebook and obtain the clown potion formula from them. But Clen doesn't understand what the other two clues signify. He's shown another person, and he has no idea who he is either. Later, Clen goes to the Divination Club, where he comes across a woman who has come with a newspaper in her hands, headlined about the Hornasis mountain range iron mine investment fraud case revolving around a man named Lanavus. Suspecting that the woman has come here to get the diviner to divine Lanivus's whereabouts, Klen tells her that he will need more information, like accurate personal details and personal items. The woman gets excited, realizing that Klen is the seer who's in charge of these kinds of tasks, and she asks him if the man's child would work for the divination. It just so happens that the woman has brought her niece, Magos, with her, who is pregnant, to say the least, with Lanavus's baby. Apparently, Lanavus did the dirty deed with her before marrying her, and ran off after stealing all of Magos's family savings. That's why the woman wants to find Lanavus. Klen sadly gives them the unfortunate news that he can't work with unborn babies, so he asks them to come back a few months later when the baby is born. The woman doesn't want to wait though, as she is more than desperate, so she decides to take Magos immediately to a clinic to get her miscarried. However, Magos refuses, believing that the baby won't turn out to be a scum like his father, and claims that the baby is gentle, as it hums and whistles for her, helping her sleep. Klen has never heard of a phenomenon like this, and at first thinks that Magos has gotten completely out of her mind. In any case, both the ladies run out, having no luck here, and Klen doesn't meddle in further, since it's none of his business. The receptionist, Christina, asks Klen why he came here today instead of his regular schedule, and Klen explains that he's had a dream where he saw this bald fat bro standing nearby Vincent. He's drawn a sketch of that man and asks Christina if she's ever seen him. Christina takes a close look and vaguely recalls seeing this man arguing with Vincent a month ago. She becomes curious, asking Klen if he suspects that this man is connected to Vincent's death. Even if she meant it as a joke, Klen advises her not to take things so lightly, because a seer's dreams are mostly divine revelations. Hearing this gets Christina even more delighted, and she says that Klen's current investigation is just like what happened in a story from Miss Forz's novels. Apparently, Miss Forz is famous for writing detective stories, and in one of her stories, the killer is often very close to the victim. Klen doesn't know how this will ever help him, so he goes back to the previous topic and asks Christina if she can remember what conversation Vincent and the fart man were having. Christina barely recalls that they were arguing about ruins, and Klen instantly tries to connect the dots, wondering if they were talking about the ruins on Hornasis Mountain Peak. He then notices a library card, and intuitively he can feel that it has something to do with the Fat Man. He's right, because the Fat Man is at the same library, who I just learned has a human name. It's Sirius. His name is Sirius. Anyway, Klen goes through the member list at that library and finds Lanavus's name there. After searching for related info on Lanivus, finds that another man stopped coming here on the very day of Vincent's death, and so he deduces that the Fat Man is the same dude named Sirius Arapis. And fortunately for Klen, he sees Sirius on the other side of the aisle, and as their gazes lock, Sirius's shocked expression makes it clear that he realizes Klen means trouble. So Sirius makes a run for it, escaping by crashing through the window, and Klen follows, asking the librarian to call the police immediately. Klen then follows Sirius's blood trail, and as Sirius's Beyonder ability derails, he mutates like a monster. Klen fights with courage this time, and being the king of luck, he manages to take Sirius down with a single shot to the head. Using his seer vision, he inspects Sirius's corpse, and noticing that his spiritual body is starting to disappear, he uses his divination skill to find clues to the clown potion formula. This time, his divination shows Sirius writing the formula in the past while wearing a hanged giant bracelet. As he curiously uses divination on the hanged giant bracelet next, it brings him before the true creator. Klen knows from his prior experience that he shouldn't gaze upon a god again, so he doesn't turn around, and so he doesn't get punished. As the dream shatters, Klen returns to reality and finds Dunn standing beside him. Dunn reprimands Klen for risking his life by using divination on a derailed Beyonder. Klen promises it won't happen again, and then asks Dunn if he's found any clues from Sirius's corpse. Leonard has found a letter written to Mr. Z, and the codename suggests it's a letter to an Aurora Order member. In the letter, Sirius had written that he and Vincent found nothing of value from the Antigonus family notebook, except for what he found previously, the clown potion formula. Clen tells Dunn that he managed to attain the formula through the psychic connection, and Dunn tells him to submit it so that they can send it to the Holy Cathedral for verification. Anyway, there's more stuff written in the letter, like how the Antigonus family had a treasure that can revive a dead person, and that treasure is believed to be in the Hornasis mountain range's ruins. Sirius then told Mr. Z that he's prepared for the doomsday and will gladly offer all of the lambs of Tingan as a sacrifice to their master. A couple of hours later, Clen figures out from reading Sirius's letter properly that the Antigonus family's bizarre and terrifying pathway that Emperor Roselle talked about is the Seer pathway. It starts to make sense to Clen why he's been hearing Hornasis ever since he took the Seer pathway, because those whispers are trying to lead him to the treasure sealed in the Hornasis mountain range's ruins. However, there's this other word, Phlegrea, he's been hearing as well, and there are no clues to what that word means. In any case, Clen wants to stay as far from this treasure as possible, because the notebook itself has already caused the death of many people. Clen goes through all of the events again from the very beginning and realizes that he's been getting involved in many serious, fateful encounters due to coincidences, and it makes him think that these aren't coincidences at all. There's a mastermind behind it all. The biggest coincidence of all is Clen being transmigrated into this body. So he writes down the words, the true reason behind Klein's suicide, and uses divination on it, but he doesn't see anything, and admits that divination isn't omnipotent. Admitting that helps digest the Sequence 9 potion completely, giving him enough of a boost that he succeeds in entering the dream world. Not only that, but he's able to explore everything and everywhere around the city in this specific past. After exploring the city like Superman, he notices a red, glowing chimney in the distance and realizes that the mastermind is in that building, but something interferes again, kicking him out of there. Just then, it's revealed to us that a month ago, Azek's son's skull was taken by Lanavus, a Sequence 8 swindler beyonder, and he placed it above the shoulders of a woman chained inside a ritual circle. Lanivus's accomplices prayed to their creator, sacrificing themselves, which caused the woman to get possessed by something ominous. Is it the same woman, Magos, the pregnant woman, who came to the divination club with her aunt looking for Lanivus? Clen is sitting idly, fishing near his university alongside Professor Azek, and he can't think of anything else but the red chimneys. He hasn't been able to get there due to the interference even in the gray mist, meaning the secret mastermind is quite powerful. Clen thinks that if he gets promoted to Sequence 8, then perhaps he will become better. He wonders if he can use something else to become powerful, and recalls learning about Flaring Sun's charm when he divined the sun emblem from those quirky word realms, wondering how he can learn this charm. He then comes up with an idea, turns to Azek, and asks him for a favor. After a few days at the Tarot Club gathering, Justice apologizes to Clen for not being able to find any more pages of Roselle's diary, but claims she's found something more insightful. Apparently, using her royal connections, she's got in touch with some people from a secret organization who can obtain more diary pages for her. But she doesn't know whether she should trust them or not, so she wants some information about this organization. The Hanged Man claims to know a lot, but he isn't willing to share it for free. In return, he wants £1,000, which can get you a mansion in this world. Justice agrees and gets the delivery address from him. Meanwhile, Clen can't believe how much money this girl has in her pockets, and realizes how rich she might be. With the deal completed, the Hanged Man tells Justice about several secret organizations. Many of them we already know, but according to him, the Moses Ascetic Order organization is the oldest one. That organization's pathway starts with Sequence 9 of Mystery Prior, which Clen recognizes as Old Man Neil's pathway. The Hanged Man continues, stating that the members of this organization worship knowledge itself. However, according to many rumors, the knowledge they worship came alive in the form of the Hidden Sage, an evil god, and that's why this organization is known to be severely evil. Clen ends the meeting there and goes back to the real world. While brushing his teeth, he wonders what Azek's doing, and if he's forgotten about the favor. That's when he hears a newspaper seller kid screaming about breaking news that there's been a purge targeting the devotees of the Evernight goddess. Getting interested, Clen comes down to buy a newspaper to learn the details when he runs into his siblings, who notice a gun and a cane. Melissa doesn't know details about Clen's job, so she's surprised that her brother, a history major, has a revolver with him. Clen explains that he's working for the police as a historical consultant, but doesn't bother elaborating further, and quickly leaves to avoid getting questioned. He then buys the newspaper and learns that at the dock area, followers of the Evernight goddess are being targeted by something paranormal, but there have been no casualties. Clen smiles, seeing this news, and states that this is Isaac's doing, hinting that this entire thing is related to the favor Clen asked from him. Clen then heads to the bar, where he finds Neil forcefully making Folan, a member of the mandated Punishers, hang out with him. Clen greets both of them, and the old man makes Clen drink with them as well. While gossiping, their conversation shifts to the breaking news, and Folan becomes pissed, as the dock area is under the mandated Punisher's territory. Folan wants to deal with the perpetrator, who's causing this mess, and decides to join hands with Dunn to do so. Folan suspects that an evil organization is behind this, explaining that spirits like ghosts from the Fourth Epoch are scaring the Evernight goddess devotees. Hearing this, Clen becomes certain that it's Isaac's doing, since Isaac can control spirits, because Bro literally had a spirit army. Anyway, now that things are going according to plan, Clen gets fully immersed in Old Man Neil and Folan's conversation. They end up bonding well, so much so that Folan wants Clen to join the mandated Punishers. When Folan leaves to do his duty, Leonard comes there, informing Neil that Dunn is looking for him. Clen goes along with Neil to Dunn's office, where Dunn tells everyone that he finds this paranormal case at the dock area very weird and wants Neil to investigate this case, as the others lack expertise in the dock area. As Neil hesitates, Clen volunteers to handle this case, because Clen's plan has been to handle this case alone. Unfortunately for him, though, when Dunn mentions the reward money, Neil immediately takes back his hesitation and joins Clen to handle this case together. Clen then suggests they use the Sun Emblem artifact to exorcise the spirits, but Dunn refuses because of the risks, such as civilians turning into sun-worshipping idiots for hours. Still, as Clen persists, Leonard realizes that Bro's up to something fishy. In any case, Clen manages to convince Dunn and even manipulates Dunn into making Leonard his partner. Later at the docks, Leonard confronts Clen, claiming to know that Clen is scheming something, and Leonard suspects that Clen is doing all this to uncover Leonard's secret. Clen is speechless. He can't believe Bro's self-infatuation, but doesn't say anything, thinking it's better that Leonard stays in his delusions. A police officer named Gate comes there, greeting the 4 Nighthawks who are on this case, and then brings them to the place where multiple paranormal cases were reported. Many people are present there, and seeing Clen's group, they judge them, thinking that they are some stupid exorcists who charge the government thousands of pounds. Leonard plays along, telling the crowd that they are indeed exorcists, and are going to use holy water and garlic to exorcise the spirits. With the dumb crowd believing that these guys are professionals, they then enter the building where several spirits are lurking in the dark. The spirits go berserk seeing the Beyonders, and one even goes out of the building, scaring the crowd away from there. Old Man Neil immediately tells the police officer to go call for backup when he finds the police officer acting like a puppy. Many other civilians are possessed as well, and they too act like idiots, some jumping, others spamming Fortnite emotes. One of the spirits comes before Clen to hang out because they are on the same side, and this almost blows Clen's cover. Leonard gets irritated because there's a possessed man trying his best to kiss him. He is wearing the Sun Emblem artifact, and it's starting to activate, being near so many spirits. As everything's going according to plan, Clen then secretly signals to a spirit above, who then commands the other spirits to unpossess the civilians. Leonard escorts the civilians outside of this place, and then, to calm the crowd, he tells them that the main exorcist in his team, Clen, will now begin the ritual to purge the spirits. He then hands Clen the holy water and the clove of garlic, and as Clen begins his act, Neil joins in, both chanting a ridiculously fake ritual dance, mesmerizing the crowd. When Clen comes outside, he sees a carriage almost crashing into a lady, and it's the pregnant lady, Magos. Thankfully for her, Folan comes out of nowhere, saving her from getting into a terrible accident. Clen notices Magos smiling while talking to Folan, and so he hopes that her family has accepted her child. Magos leaves, thanking Folan for saving her and her child's life, and then Neil asks Folan why he's here instead of doing his duty. Folan reveals that he's been tasked with finding Magos's husband Lanavis, who's been suspected to be a Beyonder, and that's why he's been keeping an eye on Magos in hopes of some clues. Both Neil and Folan joke around for a good long minute, and when Folan leaves, Clen comes there, asking Neil if he and Folan are good friends or something. Neil explains that they were indeed old buds working in one group, who hung out late at night while Neil's wife Celeste played piano for them. Neil then tells Clen that amongst his group, only Folan and Neil are alive, and hearing that, Clen feels sorry for the old man. Not wanting Clen's pity, Neil tells Clen to go back to the warehouse and purge the spirits from the building. Later in the evening, when their task is done, Clen's group comes to take a rest. Leonard still wonders why the spirits didn't cause any real harm to the civilian, and asks Clen to divine the cause of this entire situation. Clen does so accordingly, but finds no divination results because of Azik's intervention, which is exactly what Clen wanted. The only thing Clen sees is the southern continent's inverted pyramid, and hearing that, Leonard tells him that the perpetrator must be someone who was descended back from the dead, as that is what the inverted pyramid represents. Leonard assumes that the person behind the scenes is a follower of death and wants to unleash Pale Disaster across this continent of the north. Apparently, Pale Disaster originally refers to the battlefield incident when one man awakened from a pile of corpses and defeated thousands of soldiers all by himself. Clen knows that one man is Azik, and that means Azik is also a descendant of death, someone incredibly powerful, which could explain why the mastermind stole Azik's son's skull. Anyway, it's nighttime, so one of them must stay up and guard the artifact while the others sleep, and Clen gets the first watch. Clen's entire plan was for just this moment, and now that everyone's idling somewhere else, he performs the ritual magic to the gods, beseeching them to grant him power to attain the Flaring Sun charm. As the ritual works and Clen obtains 2 sun-flaring charms, Leonard, who's playing poker outside, senses that something unsettling is happening. A monster in the sea kills a man in a boat and then hits Clen's room in one of the ships at the docks, sensing Clen's aura that was emanating due to the ritual. Clen shoots the monster with his revolver, but it literally stops the bullets mid-air like Neo from the Matrix. Clen realizes that the monster must be a Beyonder that has derailed into this abomination, and he hopes that some cringy protagonist will come and save him. And he does. Judging by its strength, Leonard realizes that before this monster was derailed, it was at least at sequence 8. Because of how dangerous this situation is, Leonard tells Clen to get the sun emblem out of here. Clen accordingly gives the artifact to Kenley, who then runs away from there along with the other civilians who are being evacuated by Old Neil. Leonard engages in a tough battle with the mini-Godzilla from Temu, but fails to land a single decisive hit on it. In one fateful moment, the monster goes eye to eye with Neil, and it's as if they recognize each other. But the monster then continues fighting. Meanwhile, Clen was swinging upside down and around the ship amidst this chaos, and he manages to land a kick on the monster, sending it flying down. Neil uses this opportunity, using the Nocturnal Slumber card to restrict the monster from moving, and as it crashes down, an alcohol bottle from its body comes out, and it's Folan's alcohol bottle, making Neil realize that the monster is Folan, who has derailed. Wanting to send his friend to the afterlife himself, which is the least he can do, Neil shockingly kills his dear friend with his own hand. Neil then goes back home, playing Moonlight Sonata First Movement on his piano, mourning for Folan while Clen looks around his house. Clen wonders why Folan derailed out of nowhere. He begins to look around the room when he notices Neil's late wife's picture, the symbol of the bracelet she's wearing, their marriage rings that are on top of the table, and Folan's alcohol bottle's symbol make Clen realize something crucial as the music gets more and more aggressive. As the song comes to an end, Clen goes upstairs, trying to calm himself. He suspects that Folan's Beyonder derailment is related to the notebook and the mastermind behind the scenes. He trembles, wondering if every single member of the Nighthawks will have to suffer the same fate. The only way to tackle this situation is to attain stronger beyonder powers and have better self-control. He's already obtained 2 Sunflare charms that he believes will help him greatly in the future. So, he thinks it's now time to get himself promoted to Sequence 8.